Welcome to CEO Money. I'm Michael Yorba. Thanks for joining us. I have Andrew Kiegold, CEO Director of Hut Mining Corporation with us today. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
All right, I'm glad you're here too. All right, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff with regards to your company. For those not familiar with your company, please give us, a brief description, history of Hut Mining.
Sure. So Hut Mining is about a year old, and the reason that Hut was created was to provide investors with exposure to Bitcoin without having to go and buy the underlying currency. And you can see in the US right now that's actually quite topical because you have a lot of large companies such as Vanguard and BlackRock that are trying to create Bitcoin ETFs. The reason why is that they want to provide their investors with exposure to Bitcoin without them having to actually go in and create online wallets and wire money to foreign places. So what Hut 8 is, it's a public company. We're the largest cryptocurrency miner in Canada. We're focused on Bitcoin, and we provide investors with exposure to Bitcoin through a public entity that they can buy shares of through their broker.
I get it. That's a good plan. What is your relationship with Bitfury Group?
Sure. So back to when we started the company, I used to be an investment banker, and I saw a lot of different companies, and those business plans had a lot of flaws. And one of the major flaws that they had was assuming that they could master the technology without having ever really been blockchain technology people. When we created Hut 8, we said, you know what, for our investors, why don't we eliminate the technology risk, and let's go to guys that have been doing this for the last 8 years. They're the second largest ASIC chip manufacturer in the world. They have over 500 million US of revenue, 500 employees, and let's bring them in as our partners. And so what we've done by bringing them in as a partner, they're a 45% stakeholder in Hut 8, is we've eliminated that technology risk, the trial and error of trying to figure out how to set this stuff up for our investors by having them actually do it on our behalf. So they provide us a turnkey solution. We buy the hardware equipment from them, which I can describe, it's fairly unique, and then they operate it for us. So we've eliminated that for investors.
All right, did you want to get into the description now or save it for another day?
I'll give a very quick description. So what we purchased from Bitfury is something called a block box. And a block box is a 40-foot wide shipping container that, rather than being used for shipping, we layer in with the silicon chips. And each box has over 100,000 ASIC chips in it. So it's a self-contained data center. And it's portable, it's mobile, and it's upgradable to future generations. So our operations actually are located in Alberta. And if you go to our website at hut8mining.com and you see the pictures, they're basically these shipping containers that are just laid out over a 10-acre field. We plug them in, they're monitored by satellite, and that's how we mine our Bitcoin.
Brilliant. That's really good.
Yeah. The other advantage is if the price of electricity was ever to shift to places where we could find cheaper electricity prices, we do have the ability to move those shipping containers, and we can become energy hunters because, as I'm sure your viewers would know, about 75% of our cost of mining is at the cost of electricity.
That's funny. I happen to know a guy who's got 3 geothermal plants on his ranch. Maybe I can hook you up.
Absolutely. We'd be happy to talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, he's got a really cool boat out in Lake Tahoe. I'm sure I could take care of it for you. Let's move on. Blockchain seems to have its footprints in every industry nowadays, and Bitcoin is arguably becoming the standard in digital currency. What reasons do they have they become such enormous disruptive technologies in such a brief period of time?
Yeah, I mean, there's a very long answer to that question, but essentially it revolutionizes the ability to create, I mean, in the case of Bitcoin, going back in a little bit of history, so if you think about back in the early 1900s, all currencies were tied to gold. And it was during the First World War that a lot of the European currencies went off the gold standard in order to finance the ability to print more money to finance the war. And then I believe it was after the Second World War, during the Second World War, the US went off the gold standard as well to print money. So today, most fiat currencies are backed by debt. There's no gold behind these currencies. So what's happened with the creation of something like Bitcoin, which was created in 2009, was when it first started trading, right after the financial crisis all around the world, is the ability to have an international currency that's not controlled by government or a central bank, but largely it is monitored, and the digital ledger of blockchain is controlled by the users. That's a massive revolutionary change with respect to how things needed to get done prior to that. It puts the power back into the hands of the consumer, and I think the potential is to allow banking for millions of people around the world that may not have proper access to the banking system.
I get it. That makes sense, and I'm sure our audience will get that too. Talk about size of your competition in your industry and the edge that Hut 8 has over them.
Sure. So we're currently the largest cryptocurrency miner in Canada. We are solely focused on Bitcoin right now. We operate 66.7 megawatts, so just under 70 megawatts. I think, it's hard to get full information. I think we're 3 times larger than anybody else in Canada right now in terms of our scale. We always intended to be an industrial scale company. So the block boxes I was referring to before, they consume between 1.1 and 1.2 megawatts each, and we've got 57 of those right now. And again, our advantage over other people is as a public company, we're able to access down the road public capital. And it's the partnership with Bitfury that allows us, to be able to access chips. One of the things I didn't mention, and this is a big difference, is when other companies buy mining equipment, they're generally paying cash. Because of our relationship with Bitfury, they take back 40% of what we purchase from them in equity in our company. And at the last round, they took back 40% at $5. So we expect that to continue going forward, but it's a huge advantage that creates alignment. Their ownership means our chips are the most technologically advanced and they get delivered on time. Why? Because our success relates to their success. I'd say the third piece, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want you to get it out.
Yeah, the last piece that I think makes us very different and unique, and this is back to, again, how we wanted to differentiate Hut 8 from every other mining company out in the world really right now. We're the only guys that have announced a major power contract with the utility. So we have a deal in the city of Medicine Hat, which is in Alberta, Canada, for a 10-year power deal at rates that in US dollars would be probably just over 3 cents. That is highly competitive anywhere in the world. We've locked that in. Medicine Hat built and has 2 42 megawatt turbines there, and we went in, and one of them is solely dedicated to Hut 8. So we've got guarantees on power at attractive rates. We've solved the technology question, meaning that we're not trying to figure out how to use the technology. And we've also solved the ability for us to get the right chips and get them quickly via the relationship with with Bitfury. And way back in December and in January of this year and last year, we raised $108 million Canadian. And so we're fully funded and we have no debt.
All right. Now my final question for today is, what are the goals for the company for the remainder of 2018 and through 2019?
Sure. So currently our price for producing a Bitcoin, we released our second quarter last week. We did, I believe it was about $11.5 million of EBITDA on a close to over 18 million of revenue, and that was with partial operations. We've since then increased the size of our operating capacity by 350%, so that won't be reflected for later. But our price for mining a Bitcoin in the last quarter was about $2,700 US. And an average for the first 6 months of this year is about $2,300 US per coin. So where we want to focus go forward is our margins are quite good even at these Bitcoin prices, but in sort of, continuing to have operational excellence and continuing to keep our margins as large as possible and our price for mining a Bitcoin as low as possible, especially with the network hash rates that keep going up.
Got it. All right. Andrew, thanks for being a guest on the show today.
With pleasure. Thank you very much.
You've been watching CEO Money with Michael Yorba. Don't forget, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.